Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, HOA put a lien on my 200-year-old farm property and tried to tow my farm vehicles. I never joined the HOA to begin with. A few years ago, when I dealt with an HOA menace, I honestly thought it was never going to end. As of the first moment that I encountered these a-holes, I realized that I had just gotten into a firefight with a bunch of entitled sociopathic narcissists. From that moment, I also became an advocate for no HOAs. Not only have I personally had incredibly bizarre experiences of overstepping and trespassing with HOA boards and their members, but several friends of mine have had similar stories. Mine is probably one of the worst though. It all starts with my siblings selling their inherited land to some residential zoning companies. My great-grandfather purchased over 3,000 acres of land that he used for farming. He passed down the land and home to my grandfather, who then passed it down to my dad and then to us. My brother and sister were not interested in using it for agriculture, but I wanted to keep the family business going. My brother and sister inherited 1,000 acres each and sold their shares to the same company. I kept mine and also purchased 1,100 acres of land that was adjacent to ours. As soon as the companies started building homes and they became inhabited by people, an HOA was then established and recognized by the county. I had heard stories from friends about their HOAs and the hassle that they caused them, so I was not buying into that system. I received some unstamped letters in the mail one day, and this was my first indication that I was going to deal with a whole lot of illegal petty BS. Anyway, I digress. It was essentially a contract and some garbage welcoming me into an HOA. And by the way, Ripe Stars, that is definitely the sort of welcome that you don't want to get in the mail. Anyway, again, I did not sign up for the HOA. I was an established home and property far before they were built. As far as I am concerned, they can go pound sand. Anyway, I disregarded the first letter but sent it an emailed copy to my brother for his own entertainment. He is an attorney that lives across the country from me. He also confirmed that it was illegal on a federal level for them to put mail in my mailbox. So we enter the next week and I receive another copy of the same documents, but this time I put it back in the mailbox labeled "Return to Sender." A few days later, my wife and I are returning from a run in town to grab groceries, supplies, dog food and whatnot. When we arrive home, we notice several cars parked around the entrance of my driveway, which makes it difficult for me to get through. I squeeze my big country truck barely through, watching the three individuals cringe as I nearly scrape all of their fancy pants cars. They were waiting on our porch, standing in the cold in their nice black pea coats. It was two men and one woman. She was wearing an animal print pencil skirt that made her look like Cruella de Vil. They spoke with an arrogant tone, explaining how we must abide by their HOA policies, yada yada, and that part of my land needed to be rezoned. Rezoned for what? I found out later it was so they could try and have the land relabeled as residential, forcing me to sell it to them. It was obvious right away that they were looking to purchase my land from me or essentially force me to sell it to them. I asked them to leave, and when they refused, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started up my big truck, attached a large chain to the front and headed down the driveway towards their vehicles. They all three ran like hell to their cars and left. I gave them a chance. I probably should have just ran over their cars. The homeowner association was pretty pissed after this. I knew that would not be the last time I heard from them, but I was pissed too. So I started setting up cameras and started building a property fence around my home and considered even putting up a gate. I did not trust these people already. They continued to put letters in the mail without going through USPS, so I ended up alerting the postmaster. The HOA received a pretty hefty fine, which they got even more pissed about. Their stupid letters were always telling me things about my driveway not being kept up right, my mailbox being the wrong style, my house having the right curb appeal, etc. Oh, and they hated the barns. My wife started digging into some legal information on what the HOA can and cannot do, and even contacted the county. We both had a feeling that they were up to something because they had been too quiet for a few days. It turns out we were right, and they had just put a lien on our house with some documents I had never seen before. At this point, I needed to reach out to my brother, who does not practice law in my state but knows people in the business, and got me into contact with a super awesome attorney named Jennifer. She was quick to set the ball rolling and stopping the lien on the house. It took a few weeks, but she got the job done faster than most could have. It helps that they never showed up to any hearings. Not even a week later, my wife and I had to travel out of town for a funeral. When we came back, my farm truck, 2 pieces of equipment, and my Jeep that I had left because we just took my wife's car. I was beyond crappy about this. I went on my cameras and confirmed what I had suspected, which was somebody came onto my property and towed my vehicles and equipment without permission. I could not make out any of the companies named on the tow trucks though. I called around to all the towing places in town, and everyone denied having anything to do with it. Turns out it is because one of the guys that is on the board owns the tow truck company, along with several other businesses that have popped up in the last year or two. I started gathering my evidence, camera footage, letters, the postmaster verifying their illegal use of the USPS system. I was going to do something about these people at some point, even if I knew that it would take months. Perhaps even years. God, I'd hoped not. I managed to recover my vehicles and equipment for quite a bit of money. It cost me almost $5,000 just to get my larger backhoe hauled home, since you cannot use a commercial tow truck for it. They really went out of their way to take that piece of equipment off my farm. Another week later, I found some of my property fence had been destroyed. This was one of the more recent complaints they had in their letters. They finally started sending legally, by the way. I caught them on camera that night as well, just before they took down and destroyed over half a dozen of my security cameras from around my property. That same night, they actually left open one of my gates, which let loose 7 horses. Thankfully, they were all recovered, but I would have been crazy pissed if one of the horses were hurt or lost. I contacted my attorney, and she finally managed to put together a restraining order through the courts with all of the other evidence we had. These people were dense in the head, not seeing that they had no leg to stand on. The woman on the board must have been the driving force behind the crazy persistent harassment, as she continued to try and destroy my property. She had someone, they were wearing all black, come and slash all of my family's tires and leave the gate open again. Thankfully, I had all the horses put up because it was night, of course. I called the cops this time and filed a report. My attorney, of course, took this to court. A hearing was demanded where all of the board members and any affiliated companies were required to show up to court. It did not take long for the judge to make a ruling, considering there was a restraining order in place and all of the obvious harassment. The companies and the HOA were required to leave me and my property alone for that day forward, plus they were to pay me for all of the money I was forced to spend getting my equipment and vehicles out of impound, along with more for compensation. It was a wonderful day. The HOA has thankfully continued to leave us alone, and I'm not afraid to say that saying "screw you" in court was well worth the time, money and effort I spent dealing with them. And ripe stars, if you have watched until here and still enjoy the stories about crazy HOAs, then I would really appreciate it if you could also post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much in advance. The next one is titled "Bullies Never Grow Up." Okay, so I am a bouncer. Proof username, so I work at this fairly popular bar in a college town. It's a good gig and I get paid enough to live and have a good time. The first few months I worked there were awesome. Getting paid to be big on slow nights, talking to girls all night, and after the bar closes we get to go behind the bar and take shots for free for as long as it takes the manager to count all the tips. It was awesome. So after a few months of working there, my grades start to slip and I tell my manager that I want to take a month off to focus on my grades. My manager is a cool dude and he says that is fine, come back when you are ready. So I get my grades up and come back a month later ready to work. A new bouncer has been hired who used to work there a few years ago. He is big and dumb, so we will call him Lump. So Lump thinks he is hot crap coming back to his old stomping grounds. He even goes as far as to tell all the other bouncers that our manager made him the head of security. He wasn't. I'm a pretty laid back guy, so I did not care who was head of security as long as I'm getting paid. Well, Lump is a huge alcoholic. He would come to work at 10, drunk as hell, and try to order all the other bouncers around. Lump was a better bouncer than me simply because he was a huge a-hole to everyone, so I did not give a damn what he asked me to do as long as it was not too strenuous and I was not the only one doing it. Sometimes he was a cool guy and well, other times he would come in to work drunker than a one-eyed catfish swimming backwards in a bird bath. And then also order the other bouncers around while he sat on his fat ass and drank beer that he stole. We were not supposed to drink while on duty, by the way. I usually did not say anything because I did not care to have a hostile work environment, but well, one day he went too far. It was closing time and I went back behind the bar and me and my buddy, he can be L, did something like 15 shots in 20 minutes. We were feeling good. There is usually an after party at one of my coworkers' houses where we get slaughtered. Lump was trying to go to this party and nobody was sure whose house it was. So it's me, Al and Lump sitting outside of the bar drinking. Lump tells us to get in his truck and let's go to the party. Me and Al don't want to ride with Lump because he is really drunk and it is raining really hard. Well, this upsets Lump and him and Al get into a big argument. Out of nowhere, Lump uppercuts Al to the ground and yells, "F you!" gets in his truck and swerves off. I felt really weak because I was so drunk that I did not even know Al got hit until after Lump drove away. So me and Al sat outside drinking and determining what we would do about Lump. Remember how I said Lump used to work at the bar and then came back? Yeah, it was because he had gotten fired from his last 2 jobs for being so drunk all the time, so he came to a place where he could get drunk and get paid. Lump also drove home drunk every night. So one night after the bar was closed, me and Al were sitting outside waiting for Lump to leave. He stumbles out of the front door, gets in his truck and swerves away. I quickly pull out my phone and dial 911. I tell them that I believe there is a drunk driver on the road. He is leaving, name of bar, and heading towards where he lives in a red Dodge pickup. They said thank you for the information, so me and Al catch a ride with one of our sober friends and lo and behold, what do we see? Lump's truck on the side of the road and Lump in the back of a cop car. There were 2 cops on the route that Lump was taking. Me and Al took appropriate shots at after party to celebrate. Aftermath, Lump did not come into work the next night or all that week. My boss was informed by one of the local cops that patrols the bar that Lump assaulted one of the policemen in a rage and that he was in jail awaiting trial for both that and DUI. It does not pay to be a bully, Lump. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you have ever gotten revenge on a bully, then please let us know either in the comments or on r/Ripe Stories on Reddit, where you can share your own stories, and there is a good chance that I might read them in a video. The next one is titled Military Revenge. This is not my story, but my father's. However, it definitely belongs here. Dad was a lifer in the Air Force, eventually retiring with the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. So many of his stories highlighted the absurdity of the Corps, but this one is one of his best. He was stationed at a rather parched outpost in the desert southwest, and this base had a small reservoir that was the sole storage for the freshwater system. Signs were posted about every 10 feet warning dire consequences to anyone fool enough to take a dip in the post's water supply. The base was small with limited entertainment for the airmen, so passes to travel into town were a hot commodity and were used by the brass as a tool to reward a crew's performance. My dad's flight crew were gifted with a badge of the coveted 3-day passes, a long weekend. Oh, and the trouble they could get in. It was going to be glorious. So 5 of them piled into a jeep and headed for the front gate. Now this was July in the desert, it was probably 115 Fahrenheit out on the flight line and the jeep had a lot going for it, but AC was not one of those things. The road to the front gate curved past the reservoir and the 5 of them could not resist. They pulled up to the edge of the lake and ran full tilt into the water. Ah, it felt so good. Until they started back to the jeep and then found standing there 2 MPs slowly shaking their heads back and forth. Oh, this was not good. So off to the wing commander's office they go. Damn, so the quintet are silently standing at attention, water dripping onto the floor. The WC looks at each of them and says, "I know why you did it, and I'm not even particularly mad, but you know that I cannot have base personnel swimming in our drinking water. So here is what I'm going to do. Leave is cancelled for now, return to your barracks. I'm going to take these passes, but you'll be getting them back after they've dried out. Okay with you?" All the men agreed that the wing commander was a wise and gentle soul, and they all promised that this would never ever happen again. So off to the barracks they went. Days went by, no passes. Weeks went by, no passes. Now it was months. Had the WC forgotten about the men? So the crew drew straws. My dad got the short one. Off to the commander's office he went. It was lunchtime and no one was in the outer office. He walked quietly up to the WC's door and knocked gently. Nobody answered, but the unlocked door swung open to reveal all their passes sitting on his desk, floating in a glass of water. Pro-revenge, USAF style. The next one is titled Co-worker Revenge. A co-worker that has consistently been lazy and tries to sabotage my workstation while the manager is working to show that someone is worse at their job than her, is routinely bringing in her dirty dishes for us to wash, thinking we would not care or notice. She got in trouble for leaving half-filled mugs of coffee in the storeroom until they had curdled, so now she is dumping them for us to wash. I am not paid to do her dishes, so I have taken to the habit of, if I see them, I bin them. Surprisingly, she is not bringing in her dirty dishes anymore. I did not think this would blow up the way it did, hence I spent so little time explaining it. Bin means trash can, and I am Australian. I am a server and we do have a dishwasher on certain days, but oftentimes if it is slow, the dishwasher won't come in and it is up to the servers to wash the dishes from service. As you can imagine, this can lead to us being torn from 2 places at once, hence my repeated frustration at her bringing her dishes in the morning and dumping them for a server to do instead of her quickly putting them through the dishwasher herself. But that is just who she is as a person, and hence why I am more than fine throwing away her dishes in the morning. I could write a novel on all the crap she does to screw over her co-workers. One instance when she called in sick twice with the virus in less than a month, leaving a co-worker to handle a morning rush all by himself, just so she could recover from a late night of drinking. We knew she had been drinking on both occasions, since she also likes to use our commercial bin for her rubbish, and found that morning she had dumped 20 bottles of beer, 3 wine bottles, all in a delivery box with her name on it. Plus, she was actively walking down the street in front of the restaurant where we could see her. Thanks again for being petty with me. It is good to have a few more ideas of what to do with stray dishes that pop up. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.